Welcome to Tea Time with Shaylee and Amber. I'm Shaylee Evans, and I'm a life coach for pets and their people. I'm a truth seeker, and it's my passion to empower others and to give animals a voice along the way.
I'm Amber Leidick, and I've been a performance horse trainer focused on behavioral issues for over 20 years. My current passion is creating impactful in-person and online events and collaborating with professionals to be on the leading edge of positive change in the horse industry.
We are two friends invested in theta healing, belief system work, animal communication, and any resources that benefit human-animal partnerships. So turn up the volume and let's dive into the Great Awakening, brought to you by our horses. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. We want to know, are you goal-oriented? Do your goals and desires matter to you? Are they important to you? Because if they are, you have to know that your horse has goals in some sense or desires that are important to them too. And the amount of zest that you have for getting your lead changes, riding them, putting them on the trailer, whatever it is that you want to do with them, it's important to remember that they have an equal or maybe even stronger desire in their own little minds to go graze, be out with horses, spend more time in turnout, whatever the case may be. So, we are starting out this podcast by encouraging you to see things from your horse's perspective. And this is kind of born from a conversation that we were having around. Imagine asking for freedom, connection, love, joy, all the things that we say we feel when our ridden work is going well or our time with our horses is going amazing. Like, if you ask somebody, if we asked any of my clients, why do you want to ride your horse? Or any of Amber's clients, why do you want to ride your horse? It would probably be, I feel so connected. I feel so free. Well, imagine asking for all of those emotions from an animal only to deprive them of their very own version of that. So that's what we're going to talk about. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, I am currently obsessed with desire. So this is great news that this is what we're talking about because I love it. I feel like the reason people kind of skip out on kind of going deeper into their horse's experience and looking at it from their perspective and forgetting that they do have their own things that they love and want is because they kind of forget what they actually want. And I feel like when you ask somebody specifically with their horse, there's like the pendulum swing, right? Where like the people that are so goal oriented, that are so like, this is the show I want to get to. And then there's all this like meaning tied into, and if I don't, then blah, blah, blah. Or there's the people that have dipped their toe into like what we talk about, and they're like, all that I think about is what my horse wants, but they have no idea what they want. And I feel like you can't really swing in either of those directions and find true connection. So the piece where the person gets to find what their desires are first and like really feel into what it feels like to get those, that piece almost reminds them how their horse might experience and keep them connected to that, right? Like people forget, like I just did that the art of holding last month, and when I asked people like what are your desires? Like what do you really want? Like some people didn't even know anymore. And there's a lot of conditioning, especially for women, that you're told if you want too much or, there's you're asking for things that you're needy or you're greedy or, you're bitchy or whatever it is. So I feel like there's a little bit of work to be done of like what do you actually want and why do you want it? And then to be able to then hold space for, oh yeah, and my horse also would like to snack and definitely wants to go have buddies and play around and just be filthy and dirty. And so I think it's super fun conversation because especially going into the season where everyone's talking about what are you getting for someone? What do you want? What are you getting? What are you getting? And we have a bunch of givers that follow us. So it's like, well, what do you want? Like your capacity to receive is like definitely interwoven in your capacity to give without being depleted and burnt out. And what's the point if that's what you're doing to yourself? So I like this conversation.
Yeah, and I know you and I talk about that a lot, where it's like there's so much joy in giving that when we don't allow ourselves to receive, we're depriving someone who actually truly wants to genuinely give from that joy. And when you think of it that way, it makes it so much easier to receive, but it does kind of have to come from an authentic place. And I think that's why we do the work first, right? Because there can be a place where someone's like giving to the detriment of their health. And like if you're in the receiving mode, there's that energy that just gets out of balance. And I think it makes a lot of sense, talking about desires being wrong from an animal communication standpoint, just thinking back to conversations I have with people where they're like, "Oh, I want to be out on trail, but all my horse wants to do is eat grass." And it's like, "Well, what's wrong with that?" "Well, I don't know. We're supposed to be going and doing, and he's a little fat right now, so he can't be on the grass." And it's like everything that this horse desires. And what I think the more that we make it wrong, the more that the horse is like, "I want it so much." And then we have these horses that are like in muzzles and they're pushing fences and they're like, it's like my desire is so because just because we stop allowing the behavior doesn't mean that the desire
It
ceases
goes
to
away.
exist. Like it's
Yes.
still there. And so, but I think the energy behind it is so important. So like let's say your horse actually does have a medical condition because it seems like a lot of horses actually are metabolic these days and like needing to be restricted from grass. And there's some very real symptoms that come with that. But like instead of just saying like no, that's bad, you can never have that, like a human who's like cutting themselves off from certain foods or certain experiences. When you start doing that to yourself, you start feeling the resistance of that instead of being like, well, what if we do this instead? So I think there's like an ebb and flow, and it's intertwined, right? The giving and receiving is an ebb and flow. Um the wanting of something and the having of it is an ebb and flow, and there does have to be balance in that. But I think maybe it does start with, okay, what are my desires? What are my horse's desires? And am I making that right or wrong in some sense? And don't you think that's where the disconnect probably starts?
Yeah, for sure. I think people judge themselves for wanting. And then I think that's what, if they're not allowing themselves to have the things that they want or really dive into the energy behind, it's okay, I'm worthy of receiving. It doesn't make me XYZ. I won't be perceived as XYZ if I want or even share what they want out loud. And then going even further and asking for what they want, I feel like that resistance that they have inside of them will create, where you're talking about giving from a certain energy. If you're giving from a place of like that flow, and because it feels good to you, not because you're being depleted, the person on the receiving end feels the difference as well. And when you think about you feeling like, oh gosh, I don't want compliments, I don't want attention, I don't want even gifts or whatever around the holiday season, it makes me cringe, it makes me shrink, it makes me like, oh gosh, you think about it actually feels on the other end, because I had this experience. I was the one that was like, didn't feel worthy of the thing that was done for me. And on the receiving end, the person giving was like, oh, they kind of feeling grateful. Like it can come off as something completely different. And it is the energy behind it. So the value of doing like the work behind, where you're like, wait a minute, why do I feel like I'm not allowed to want or desire or um receive, is going to be reflected in your judgment on your horse's wants and desires, and the behavior that you are putting on yourself, you're going to put on your horse, which sucks for your horse because he knows what he wants and he's going to do his best to get it. Like, and it's just going to create conflict between you and your horse. So
I
yeah.
think another piece that's kind of coming up for me, just hearing you talk about that, is like people feeling that disconnect. And I think it's a self-made disconnect, and I don't exactly know where it comes from, but you probably do, of like, well, he's choosing the grass over me, or he's choosing his friends over me. And like, it's like that need for like, this is our time together. I drove 2 hours to the barn and I'm spending 2 hours here with you, and this is our time together. And I think that there's such a misconception of, and that's where it's like, when we try to see things in new segments, or we know like as humans, I think we get attached to a certain thing and then it becomes a continuous experience. Whereas, like, our horses, it's like, okay, we're going in the cross ties, new segment, going outside, new segment, eating some grass, new segment. And we're constantly having to reconnect our energy. And it should be an ebb and flow like that, because when we live that way with our horses, it's two individuals coming together to live an experience versus like us latching onto our horses. And I think that's what's coming up for me is like, oh, well, I don't want my horse to choose this over me because then I feel a separation and I feel that the most when horses want to eat when they're with their people or there's the herd bound energy and people will be like, oh my gosh, my horse is so herd bound. And whenever horses are with a human and they call for other horses, that is so triggering for humans. Why
Yeah.
do you think that is? Because I think that in that moment when a horse is feeling so unsafe and they're kind of like over threshold or they're needing their friends and they call and it ungrounds the human, it usually brings up a lot of like, well, why am I not your safe place? You know? Like it's interesting.
Yeah, I think people put a lot of pressure on their horse and the relationship they have with their horse, because they can. And I think until you can't, right? So
Hmm.
there's that nuance of the horses that are there for you, and that is not in your soul contract. And they just go along, and you can be as needy and codependent as you want and make that relationship into anything that has to happen. You can have your own story, and the horse is like, cool, I'm here for it. But then you have the other flip side where the horse is calling you into a more confident space where you're looking at your own triggers and stuff. And so I think I watch every time there's herd bound situation. It is most of the time the person is very codependent with the horse and needs the horse close. And there's a lot of touching. There's a lot of lack of boundaries. And it just creates an unsafe environment for the horse within that container when you have that going. So I feel like there's all these like precursory things that happen before you get out on the trail or you go away, and it triggers the person to feel like their abandonment stuff, like the rejection comes up, like, all these things, and they get to have their own story about their horse because the horse can't talk. Well, if you're with another person, the person can be like, well, you're just too much for me, or you're XYZ, and that's why I want space, or I'm talking to someone else instead of you, like you don't feel safe to me. And that's like a fucking gut punch. I know that because that's for me. Like, I built my entire career around like being a safe place for people and horses. And so when someone tells me I don't feel safe saying this to you, I'm like, "Bleh," like, oh God, like, why don't you just rip my soul out of my body? And it has nothing to do with me per se. It could be just the person doesn't feel safe sharing in general, but I'll take it personal, right? So I feel like people will be drawn to horses sometimes because you can bypass a lot of this work if your horse is willing to tolerate it until you hit a horse that's like, mm-mm. Then you kind of have to look at it, and it is the person's work to do. And it's very hard. I have so many clients that I'm like, okay, like, let's stop and connect with the horse after we've done something. And I'm like, don't touch him. And it is like literally excruciating for some people to not move in and touch them. Like, why do you need to touch? You don't need to touch them to have that connection, to let them, co-regulate with you. When you have that, like, I need vibe, the horses want to back off just like people do. So people will have that experience, I think, in their human life. So then they move to horses and they can kind of impose their stuff on the horses until you can't anymore. So I think it is really interesting because you want the horse to feel safe in its own space. And even if that's 8 feet at the edge of the lead rope, sometimes that's too much for people. And I think that when I work with horses that are herd bound like that, it's always back to let them feel safe away from you. Let them feel safe in their own skin. Let them know that they can regulate here, that they don't need to be on top of you being touched, because it actually is a false sense of security for them. It makes you feel better in the moment, but eventually it creates fear and dysregulation because the horse then starts to walk all over the person, and the person gets dysregulated and the horse is dysregulated, and then it's just like a shit show, and they're screaming and running in circles all the way back to the herd or to the stall or to wherever they're trying to get. So yeah, I feel like just depending on the horse and depending on your journey, some horses just all day long will just have that be their thing. And but I think for some people that have that big energy in their life with the disconnect and the herd bound stuff, it's like that's your call to like look at your stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, because there can be actually a lot of invalidation in the horse's experience through herd bound energy, because people will be like, you live here, they're not going in. The biggest thing that we hear, right, is I don't get it. They can see their friends. Their friends are right there. They can see them. And it's like, I understand that viewpoint from like a human perspective, but like at the same time, it doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? Like you can tell me all day long I'm afraid of, I'm afraid of heights, and you can tell me all day long, just don't look down. I'm holding on to the back of your shirt. Just walk close to the edge of the cliff. Like you're not gonna fall. I'm gonna hold you. And I'll be like, yeah, okay, fuck off. Like, I might do it, but I'm not gonna feel fully okay with it. I'm gonna be like, talking about it, and as soon as I accomplish the thing, I'm freaking back where I want to be. And I think that a lot of times our horses feel that, and in my opinion, Liberty work is such a good vibrational indication of like where you are with your horse, even with positive reinforcement, because there can be, and I train in positive reinforcement, and there can be like that argument of like, well, I don't want my horse to constantly be bribed by the food or whatever. We're always exchanging something, right? We're either exchanging pressure and release. Even scratches is a release of pressure. So there's always going to be some sort of exchange in any training that we do. It's like pick whatever you want it to be. Well, no amount of alfalfa pellets, carrots, Timothy pellets, whatever you're training with is going to get the horse to connect with you if they truly don't want to. Like it's fascinating. And I learned that with my mare because you can be doing the most simple, most seemingly fun, easy things with her, and she'll just be like, "Meh, I'm gonna go check this over here." Like she'll just leave, and it's so fun to do Liberty work, and I hope that everybody in their experience with their horses does it. So they can experience that, and you talk about this a lot in the work that you do with your clients. So you can experience them leaving you and how that feels in your body and what your initial reaction wants to be, right? Because mine, when I first met you and I started working with my horses just through, hearing what you have to say and you talking about um helping your clients regulate their own nervous systems and like being okay in their own bodies and having their own experience. Well, when we started first talking about this a couple years ago, and my horses would disengage, I would immediately go to, oh God, I did something wrong. Like, I did something wrong. I pushed him away. Like, I must suck. I'm not in, like, my timing is not right. I don't have a good feel, whatever. And it had nothing to do with that. It's just like and now, like, Fern, she'll disengage, and I'm like, oh, she's gonna go pick up a couple pellets over there. She'll be back. Like, she needed a little lap. She needed a little breather. And now it's like, no big deal. But it is fascinating when you first start that work, when you're used to having a horse, like you say, like they're so willing to do things until they aren't. Well, when you really start giving them choice, that's triggering for people because you realize how much they're like, actually, I would rather be doing this.
Yeah, and how many times do you hear people talk about, oh, my heart horse that I had, right? That was the horse that was there for that part of your journey, not to have you look at your shit. And then you should get a new horse because that horse either transitions or whatever it is. You don't have that horse anymore. And people are always comparing those two. Well, now I have this horse that has all of these things and I just miss being able to. And I'm like, well, welcome to welcome to life because that horse is with you for a specific reason. You know what I mean? So, but I always hear people say that. Like, I just wish, I just remember when, and it's like, well, that was great. That was for you then, and that there's no growth in that for you anymore. So, welcome to be.
Dude, I feel like you're speaking to me on that, and I have just only recently gotten past that, as you know, because after Bro died, he was my horse who was like so engaged. So, he was just easy to train. He was like that heart open. We call them our heart horses because they really are like they connect to our hearts and they like, they open us up to like all the possibilities. And it was fascinating how when he left, I had two choices, right? I could move into this new space or I could focus on all the absence of it. And I totally got stuck in that absence of like, because when you have a horse that opens up your heart like that, it's very obvious. It's kind of like when you know you're in the vortex, or you know that you're not. Like you really know that you're not when you've practiced being in there. And
Hmm.
so I had that experience with him where I'm like, yeah, he opens my heart every day. We have a lot of training. And then I go to work with Fern, who like he sent to me, and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna go over there and I'm gonna, and I had to like look at all of that and be like, dang. And I did take a break from my horses, not like intentionally, but it kind of just happened where I lost the motivation to do anything with them. But I feel like I have another point to that because there's so much validity in that, like getting back to where you want to be because we don't go back, right? Like we are going forward, and that's essentially what you're saying. Like you've had that experience. So when we're in those moments of I wish I had that horse again. What I've started doing for myself is like, I'm so glad that I know I have the possibility to feel that way with horses. How do I call that up and like be this? Because that the way that we felt with them, they were just our strongest mirror in that aspect, right? So like they were mirroring like this is how much love you have to give. They teach us that. And then I mean I say that in my sessions too, like our horses who open up our hearts, like they teach us that, they show us that we have all of that within us, and then we're supposed to take those gifts and give them to the other horses. But we end up so much because we have that heart opening experience, and then we're literally supposed to take that and pass it forward. Then we get with these other horses and they're like a different type of experience, and all we focus on is like the lack or the difference or whatever. So there's a lot of, yeah, that's such a good point. There's so much we could talk about with that.
Yeah. And I feel like that's the point too, right? Is that you get to feel that and experience it so that you know what's possible and you can continue to search for that in every relationship, whether it's horses or humans or whatever. And I think that's the point to be able to, it's like for someone learning lead changes, if you get put on a schoolmaster and it's effortless, you know what it can feel like. So then when you get on other horses, that's what had to happen for me. I was like, I can't, I was trying so hard. Like I would, the efforting that was being put into getting a lead change was just wild. And so the trainer I was working with put me on one of his horses and he's just like, just now think about the lead change. And I was like, "Oh, and so I did so much. And he was like, no, stop. And then so I had to like completely like rewire my brain to be like, this is effortless. I can feel this. And then it was. And I was like, oh, I didn't know it could be so easy. Um, and then it's like there's all of a sudden, I don't know if it's hope or it's just it's kind of wired into you to know that it's possible so you don't get so efforty because I feel like that can happen too. You start to feel the resistance and you start trying really hard, which is like completely shutting down your receiving mode and putting you into a completely different space. So yeah, it is an interesting little balance. I'm trying to think of like a heart horse for me. Like I mean, Thunder, but he was a mini horse. So what was I really doing with him other than just being in his fucking magical presence?
You know what's interesting though is I'm reading a book right now and she talks about certain animals and like their physicality, because Thunder was like such a physical little being, you know, like he was just like a dense physical little like in his body guy. And she talks in that book about how some animals are just like really connected to their heart chakra, and like that is how they present themselves to the world. So it's not necessarily always what we've done with them or how it's like certain
Yeah.
animals, but maybe you haven't needed that, or maybe you haven't been ready for that or something like that, because it is interesting how you'll be like, these horses are my last horses. And you're like so matter of fact with that. And it's like, are they? Or is there like a horse that like you're waiting for or ready for that's going to get you like back into the show world or something? And like,
Ah,
you don't want that yet. Yeah, right? Like, what if it's like, what if
well,
your heart horse is coming and you're like
I do
resisting
think
it?
of I think well, you know what too is kind of interesting because I think of Smarty as that for me.
Hmm.
Um, but then I get the guilt as soon as I'm going to say it out loud. I'm like, oh, what about Flirt? Because Flirt in his own way was very much for me in that way, and I very much obviously love him and appreciate him. He's great. But I had this thought the other day when I was bringing my horses, and I was like, if I could only have one horse, like if something happened and I had to sell all my horses but one, like which one would I keep? And I was like, oh no, it's fucking Smarty. And it made me feel so bad. It was like my own question in my own head, and then I got guilty about it.
But don't you think it's like that is the horror? It's not necessarily like you don't love all the other ones, but it's the
Mm-mm.
one that's like deeply resonating with you in your
Right.
journey right now, because Kip has been like the love of my life and I would have to keep him. But I like speaking of the guilt, like it's like I freaking love Kip, obviously, and I've had him for so long. But like if it was like you can only keep one, I'd be like, damn, I really want to keep Fern though. Like I love her. So I think that that's just only natural to be like really drawn, and like I do think they're with us in seasons too. And like Flirt and Kip, I think like they're our little seasoned veterans, and we've
Mhm.
already been through those experiences. And I feel like if we told either of them like, oh, I really love Smarty or I really love Fern, they'd be like, yeah, I know. But like I'm my own, like I already know my place in your experience. And I don't think they need that validation. Like It's
Hmm.
one of those things where, you know how Abraham Hicks always talks about, like, I want you to get into a place where if someone says I love you, you say I don't care. Someone says I hate you, you say I don't care. Like you're so grounded in who you are. I
Oh,
feel like that's Flirt and Kip, where they're like, yeah, I don't care. Like this is my space.
right. Yeah, I feel that. That helps the guilts
Yeah,
because
don't
they
feel
do
guilty.
know.
Either I'm enabling you because I feel the same way with my own herd, or you
Oh.
just shouldn't feel guilty.
Hmm.
So, just kind of branching off on this, like this conversation, I made a little post yesterday, I think it was, where I was like, gift your horse the three things that they give us all the time. And I'm just curious, like, what comes up for you around this? Because I was like, I was just driving and thinking, what is something that we are always needing from our animals that they're giving to us on a consistent basis? And the first thing is like they believe in us. Like they just believe in what we're saying. They believe in our ability. Like there's never like, I mean, well, I'm about to conflict my own statement. So I was going to say there's never a point where like we're asking them something they don't believe that we can do it, but trailer loading might. There might be certain things where they're like, oh, I don't know. But I think it has to do with like their capability and their own experiences. But I feel like in general, they believe in us and they always give us the benefit of the doubt. And I think that's such a big one because when horses are young, humans will believe that they're giving them the benefit of the doubt when they're getting back into training, when they're rehabbing. But don't you think that benefit of the doubt starts to get diluted over time based on like what the human needs or where they are vibrationally? That one is one that I've been like thinking about a lot, where it's like they'll get so caught up in their expectations for their horses that like the horse stops getting the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I think if you think of like benefit of the doubt, that's an interesting like phrase just to say in general, right? Like the doubt piece, right? It's like
Mhm.
maybe there is a possibility that this won't happen for us. But I'm gonna stay positive. So already in that statement, you're saying that there is a chance, right? That it won't happen versus maybe I feel like I'm because when you asked that question, like what was the specific question was what are you what not expecting? That's not what you said. Getting from your horses, or what was the question you asked that you said you came up with in the
It
call?
was like, no, it was like a statement. Like,
Oh, okay.
can you gift your horses the three things that they're consistently giving us, which is believing
Oh,
in us,
gotcha.
giving us the benefit of the doubt, and trusting that what we say or feel or do is
Mm.
true for us.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like because we get so caught up in our own experience that yeah, we may start when you first get a horse or you first start with a new trainer or you're starting a new program or you're doing it's like that beginning phase of course they don't understand it yet. Like we're just starting. So that it feels like the benefit of the doubt. But when you've done it for long enough and you're so embedded in the experience and it doesn't happen like you expect it to, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, now I got the doubty doubts. Like the doubt has doubted and it's doubting. Um, and I feel like they don't really do that. You know what I mean? They don't look at us and go, I'm not today. She's never going to get this. It's like they're always willing to like try so long as you're not being overwhelming to them, it feels like. You mean even the people that are clients that I have that are like, I've been working on this for so long. The horse is never like not open to doing it with them. It's just
Hmm.
showing them the ebb and the flow in the moment, right? So it just feels like when people start to get too far into the like the efforting and the agenda, and then that's when the horse is kind of like, oh, we have to tap out a little bit and back away. And then people will see like, oh, it's not going to happen. Where it's like each segment, right? New segment. Like within the moments, it's a new breath, it's a new segment. Like you can literally start over at any point in time during a session and have an entirely different experience. And I don't think people understand that because our human brains we carry all the baggage with us. We just bring it along. There are, unless you're intentional, there is no new segment. It's like I've got, 46 years of all of my stuff right here in this moment that I haven't dealt with. And this is my experience. It's like you don't have to actually live through that. And I think people don't know or forget that you can control that piece. Like you literally can control that piece.
Hmm.
But sometimes it's easier to not be so in integrity around that. and accountable for that. It's easier to push it off and go, well, this is just the way it is, or like this is just who he is and this is what we do, and it's funny because there's a horse out here who's very, very he's older, and he's the little thoroughbred that I was like, this is like your poster child thoroughbred, off the track, 20 something years, 28 years old now, just like little peg legs and just anxiety ridden, and just like nothing can change in the pasture because there's, rips the rope out of the owner's hand to go do his own because he's just like a little bored. And it's, when did that start? He's been this way his whole life, but that's the story you're telling, so that story will continue. And so I think people don't know that they have the ability to like change their experience, like even in the moment. Like people don't know how powerful they actually are. And I think that's why we do what we do, because we have to remind them.
Mm-hmm. And it is so easy to repeat things to yourself because, like, in my experience, when I said I lost my motivation to work with my horses, and I'm hearing you say, like, just take a new segment. And when it's like I lost my ability to try because I wasn't fully being like present, I feel like with my horses. So like I'd be like, oh, it'll be fun to work with Fern, put her in the arena, and like she would engage like two or three times, and I'd be like, ah, she's just not into it today. Instead of like shifting my energy and being like, well, what can we do? It's that like subtle discouragement of like, oh, well, this isn't easy for me, or like I don't know the next. I will tell myself the story of like, oh, well, I never know the next step. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know the next step. And I've said that like over and over again. And the other day I was like working with her, and I did like this like 20-minute session, and she challenges me so much. My friend Donna is like really good at keeping horses engaged. And even she's like, dude, Fern will disengage so easily. And I was like, I know, it's because I never know the next step. And so I had to be really intentional about that. And she was when I went out there and I was like, of course I know what I'm doing. Like I've been working with horses for a long time now. Like I'm pretty intuitive. I think I know what to figure out if I'm really in it. Then I realized that I was using that as an excuse to just kind of like half-ass my energy and like, like we say these certain things because we need permission to like be a certain way, I think, right? And so I think I just needed permission to have a break from training my horses and to just kind of like do other things. And so I made up all these little stories, and it's so funny how I'm having to deconstruct them now, where I'll say something and I swear she looks at me like, "What? Like why are you saying that?" It's so funny. They're so good at telling us like where we're messing up. I have another question for you that I'm curious like what your perspective is going to be. So I'm taking all these dog classes because well, they're not dog classes. They are webinars. I paid for like a yearly like webinar subscription from this dog trainer, and she works a lot with like puppies and therapy dogs and dog aggression. And I was interested because I have all these aggressive dogs on my schedule right now. And then I also have my German Shepherd Arlo, who is she's can be kind of like excitable around other dogs. And the very first webinar, it's so funny because she says like one training thing and one other thing and then an accountability thing. And she was like, if you do it this way, you're just gonna go around in circles. And I was like, fuck, that's exactly what I'm doing. Like it made sense in my mind, but then like it made sense in my mind to train her that way because I was training her to like she would look at the dog, then I'd ask her to look at me, and then she would get a reward for that for like telling me
Um,
that there was a dog. But then it turned into like like then she's like all excited and stuff, and she's like, the lady's like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing when you do this way? Like, you don't even know what they're looking at. You don't even know what you're reinforcing for. Like, you're just interrupting behavior at this point and not letting her like finish her thought. And I'm like, holy shit, that makes so much sense. Well, then she said the other day in one of the classes, you have to honestly assess what their level of skill is. Like, can he handle this? Sometimes means I want him to handle this, but that's like
mm.
not that he wants to or that he can. And I'm curious like where that kind of falls in your training with horses and their humans, where it's like, okay, when we're assessing the skill level of a horse or like where their mindset is, how do people start to learn and figure out like, are they actually physically able to handle this? Are they even in a mental space to handle this experience, or do you just want it from them? And like, how do you see like what the actual truth is, if that makes sense?
I think the way that I Well, when I first work with a horse and a person, and something I encourage people to do, like literally every time before they do stuff with their horse, especially if they're going to ride, which is so interesting because I watch people all the time go, well, today I'm going to ride, and they do zero groundwork, where I'm like, if there was ever a day that I was going to do something with my horse and I hadn't for a long time, I would definitely do groundwork before I got on, even if they're tacked up. But the expression sessions is what I call them in the round pen. When I was trained, and I went to like horse training school, quote unquote, in 2004 or something. I did the John and Josh Lyons program. We did a lot of groundwork. And in that traditional groundwork, you're taught to teach the horse to turn in the round pen, like inside turns was like a big thing
Mm.
instead of out versus outside turns, which would be towards the fence and away from you. And you can teach them to do that, right? Like you can put pressure on until the horse will look at you and then you back off. It's like, um, but what I do with people is you take them into the round pen and you bring your energy up and see where they are at, if they can go with you, if they're stuck in a place where movement doesn't feel safe, or if you get in the round pen and put a little pressure on and they just run away. You're then assessing, do they have the ability to just come back to themselves and assess instead of panicking? And what will happen as you go is you can identify where they're at mentally. And then from there, I always say with the turns, like you can actually tell when you put pressure on, and the pressure isn't so much in their proximity that they're just changing directions to get out of your way. There's enough room for them to make a decision. And it's interesting because when the horses start to connect with the person, they will naturally turn to the inside. And when the pressure is put on and they're like, I just got to get away, they turn to the outside. So I tell people we're never teaching them to turn inside. It's just information they're giving us where they are at mentally. And when they do stop, do are they able to downregulate, on their own? Or do they stay in like hypervigilance? And then I, work with the co-regulating. But after you know that you can get their nervous system on board, then you actually get a real picture of the lameness. And this isn't, I mean, when I do this, it's not like an hour long of chasing them in the round pen. It's not even like that. It's like within 5 minutes, you can tell whether or not the horse is going to be able to get there mentally with you, which I think when they're all out of whack as far as their nervous system goes, their body is going to present sometimes lame, sometimes not lame. You don't get an accurate picture of their actual physical soundness. I mean, obviously there's things where they're like dead lame or, it's clear to you just by looking at them that they're not okay. But sometimes horses look okay.
Mhm.
And you get the real picture when they're regulated because they're not hiding stuff, or sometimes they'll hold because of the tension patterns and look lame because of that. So my first thing is always like, let's assess what they need. Can they regulate with you? I do nervous system first, and then that kind of peels back what's actually going on with their body. Um, but there's so many ways to interrupt that, like you were talking about with like the treats and stuff. Like you can put the lead rope on, you can make them stop when you want them to stop. You can make them turn to the inside if you want. There's just all these things that you can do. And I even think sometimes, like you're saying, that in any modality of training or whatever you're doing, whether it's positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, like there is always a pendulum that can swing too far and make it so that it's not. I think people feel nicer about positive reinforcement. Oh, I'm giving them cookies and it's enjoyable. But like you were with the treats with Arlo, it's like, are they doing the thing because then they're focused on that? I just think anything can be done not right, but the energy behind it is like so important. So that's kind of how I
Mhm.
assess it. I just start with their nervous system because I feel like then you get a real picture of what's happening in their physical body. Um,
Yeah.
so
That makes a lot of sense. And the lady who I'm learning from, I think her name's Suzanne. Oh, gosh, I can't even think of her last name, right? Clothier or something like that. And she talks about the dogs being in the think and learn zone and how it's important to like observe them so you understand truly what the think and learn zone is because you can interrupt their behavior and think that they're in like the thinking and learning zone,
mm,
but her one of her gauges for it is when the dog is around stimulus, does she voluntarily check in with me and
oh yeah.
not voluntarily like look back and then look back at the thing. It's like can she pull her attention away from what she's looking at and look me in the eye on her own, unprompted?
Hmm.
And then can I offer her a series of commands and stuff? And I do think that so I've learned a lot about that through training my horses with intentional relaxation, where they can have their like Fern is like a queen at this. She'll have her head, and I send videos back and forth with my friends, and they'll be like, "You should have clicked for that," and I'm like, "No, dude," because you can tell there's like such a difference where she can be in neutral spine, her head is soft. Everything is soft, but like you like feel the tension in her ears, like you can tell
It's
she's
like, is
listening
this
to something.
it?
Yeah, like you could tell she's listening to something. You could tell that she's like, and if I just like hold out a little bit and like regulate a little bit more, she'll be like, and she'll take the deep breath. And then I'm like, that's what I'm rewarding for. But it's so fascinating. I think we don't spend enough time observing our horses. Like we need a lot more time, the majority of people, just like observing how they are because it can be so easy to get wrapped up in all of these things, but like when I observe Fern out in the field, I've learned that she's so environmentally oriented and it's on a subtle scale. It's not like she's always running. Well, I put shoes on her and she freaking ran around like a little banshee. And I was like, this little thing, she's been so chill for like weeks. And then I put shoes on her and I'm like, oh, it'll be fine. She was in the stall for an hour. Hopefully the glue's dry, but it's kind of cold out. What does she do? Bolt off immediately. I'm like, okay. But she's like someone who out in the field, she just notices little things. And I know that through observing her, and she's not totally freaky all the time. But like knowing that she's that way out in the field, like when I bring her into the arena, I know that she needs that space to be like she's going to be looking around and it's going to be subtle. And if I immediately wanted her attention on me, it would probably blow up at some point. Well, that's probably what it was doing when she was disengaging and I didn't like recognize it at first when I first got her. But the other thing that I think is kind of cool for us to pay attention to is like what are they choosing to do instead of what we're asking? Because I feel like that can tell us a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And I think about with the horses, what the dog trainer was talking about with like the having stimulus and then checking in with you on their own. I think you can bring the attention back, like with a cookie or with a click or with the lead rope or whatever, right? But when I start with horses, I'll get hyper fixated on stuff and I'll, explain to people this is what's going on. There is a point where, depending on the horse, if they're so far in their own experience, that I'll pattern interrupt by just moving my body. And they might look at me for a minute in the beginning and like right back, and I'll keep doing that as like a pattern interrupt. Like I feel like sometimes when they get hyper fixated on stuff like that, you can help them through it without coercing them and doing it for them almost, right? Like there's an
Mhm.
invitation, hey, look, there's movement. Can you look at me? Oh yeah. But I found by doing that, you're helping them through that just by having them turn their head and neck. Um, and then what happens is when they get into that state, it's almost like sometimes horses will get it conditioned out of them that they can help themselves because we interject so much through training, especially when it starts like when they're like weanlings, and they're already haltered and they almost forget that they're okay, that they can do their own regulating, especially if they're in a stall. So it's like you can pattern interrupt them in a way that doesn't like force them to look away from the thing. And then it almost like it builds a skill because I've watched it happen where I can do that or just cluck and they're like, oh, hi. And they immediately can come back and soften. And they may look, but they have like that full range of like being able to look left and right at other things as well and keep their ear on it instead of going into holy shit, this is a problem, what are we gonna do? It's like whoa, come back. So I think there's like a fine line of not taking total control because you're afraid of what could happen
Mhm.
versus an invitation to interrupt that pattern and give them a different option other than go off in your own freaky land and do what you will.
Yeah, 100%. I think the most value I've had with my horses is standing with them like that and doing those little, because I do the same thing, like just kind of what's gonna happen if I like scoot do you stay small first? Like, oh, let me like make some noise with sand under my boot, and then I'll be like, oh, what happens if I like, move my arm or whatever? It's like, how can I be subtle? I like to start subtle because then it's like, okay, how much do I actually have to move and or like how locked in are you? And
Yeah.
it's cool for people to like play around with that. But yeah, you're not putting in any other input other than like moving your body and then like going back to neutral. And I found that to be super powerful for my horses too, just in the exact same way that you said. And to add on to that, because I spent a long time doing that with each of my horses, it gave me a very strong indicator that bro was not okay physically because he literally could not, like, all I tried to do with him was regulate his nervous system, and he was so spooky. He could never drop into a place where he could actually feel safe in the arena or safe in the barn. He was always looking at his environment no matter how regulated I was, and he ended up having severe neck arthritis that was impacting his day-to-day life. So if you spend time with your horses, those listening, and you are like, oh, maybe I should do this, it is a really powerful tool. It's not just in the sense of, because someone could say, oh, my horse is grounded, or it's easy to like just get by without it, right? But it's that same story of, yeah, you can get by without it until you can't, like until you're in a scenario where your horse is like freaky and they don't know how to co-regulate with you or even like
Or
make
you try to put
themselves
them in a
feel
trailer.
okay. Yeah. So spending time doing that and like understanding like what your horse's normal is. And if the normal is, yeah, my horse can't even feel safe standing next to me most of the time. Like he has to have a lot of movement. We have to constantly walk circles. Like that's a little bit of an indicator. And it's not always an indicator of pain, but it can be. And it will, I think those little small moments too, that's where we can get the downloads from their higher self. And we can start getting that like, okay, something's a little weird here. Something's off. I need to look into things. And if we never spend that time opening up our hearts and our energy and like just observing them in that way, we are really closing off our strongest helper, which is our higher self, being able to connect with their higher selves. Like that truly is where all the answers are.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that piece of um when you said, yeah, it's all good until it's not. So I think a lot of people get by like that. And then it's like, then you put them into a position where it's a little bit, there's pressure. So every little thing that you kind of skipped over, glazed over, ignored will become tenfold. And then you will have to deal with it. Like it's going to happen, like eventually. But I think a lot of people don't know. They're like, oh no, we just were fine. And we, da la la. And I'm like, okay, but if you were to sit and or do something really intentional like that and go into that space, what does it bring up for you? Because you're probably just avoiding that because you're avoiding something within yourself that will come up if you stay in the stillness, in the observing, in the so I don't know, it's
Mhm.
just interesting, all of it's so interesting and fun.
It is. And so, to that point, we also believe you can create whatever reality you want. And because we believe
Even though
that,
it's all made up.
it's all made up. And in the new year, we are doing is it our third annual manifesting magic at this point?
I do believe, yes, it is.
Yes. Do you want to talk about that? I feel like you're good at preaching the good word on the manifesting magic.
Oh, it's so fun and it changes every year. And I think Shaylee and I, we well, as some people know, because I get the messages like, "Where's the new podcast?" And we broke off and we mellowed out. We went hard for like 2 years and we got a little burnt out. And then things started to feel a little monotonous. And it was like, what do we actually want? So we took a pause on the co-creating of a lot of stuff to dive into our own stuff. And I think that now we have this like new understanding of things and new information. And so this manifesting magic, I think, is going to be the juiciest one because
Mhm.
we are going to do it in a way where we have a pop-up Facebook group. We're going to have a couple of pre-recorded videos for you guys to watch to set you up for the actual workshop. Then we're going to do the actual workshop and keep the container and the energy flowing in that Facebook group. But then we're going to do a follow-up one, which is what we have not done. And I
Mhm.
think it's important because once you start the practice of having the support and the like, okay, now what's going on for you? And like, let's get you unstuck. But the momentum in that group, like, I don't know if we archived the very first one, but the second one's about to be archived. But people are still posting there, like, oh my God,
Yeah,
this
like
is what
years
I
later.
wanted. And yeah, so it's definitely a very, very potent little offering that
Mhm.
we do. And it's fun too. It's
It
really fun.
is. And there's just something so powerful about us. it's the momentum of the group. Everybody being like, okay, I have a desire. I believe I can have it. We're all kind of doing similar. This year, what we're doing different too is we're actually going to have like specific support for like different categories too, because like some people need health, some people are looking for material things, some people want experiences. And so this year we're like, let's actually give specific support for like those categories. And I think that's going to be super fun. Members in the tea house are just brought in for free. They don't have to pay for the manifesting magic, so that's awesome. Our tea house is still going strong. It's a freaking family in there, and people need to come join the family if you're feeling inspired. Our members are sitting in on this pod right now, hanging out with us, listening to us. We're planning on doing some super fun stuff in the tea house this year, and it's just an awesome community. Lots of perks, and one of the biggest perks is just everyone in there is just cool.
Yeah. Lisa says, thanks to manifesting magic, I have my heart horse now. I mean, we have people that are like, I created a new business. I was able to leave my relationship and call in a new one. And like, there's just like so many
Mhm.
things that happen in there. So it is just non-specific. It can literally be anything you want. So I'm
Yeah, can be
excited.
anything you want.
Yeah.
You have a winter journey coming up, right?
Yeah. On the 18th, I am doing, some of you did the cave meditation. I didn't do one last year. I realized a couple years ago. And I just heard about it. I heard about it for like months after, in the
Yeah,
cave.
it was good.
So I'm not burnt out this year. Last year I had a little take a breaky break before I mentally brokey broke. Um, and so I was like, oh, I'm definitely gonna do that. So it's heavily embedded with hypnosis this year. Somatic breath work and just like going deep into the subconscious. And the focus is really receiving. So ironically, it can definitely set you up for manifesting magic. Because that is the focus. It's been my jam for the last couple months, like the receiving. So that's going to be on the 18th and that's free. So I'll throw the link in there in the comments of this. And then you have your membership.
I have my membership, The Centered Human. It's got weekly insight, several monthly calls. There's monthly videos. There's a resource library. I'm putting a ton of stuff in there, actually. It might be information overload, but I've been getting some good feedback on it, and I think people are loving it. We do animal communication. It's all things animal communication and energy work and setting yourself up for connecting with your animals deeper, receiving information deeper. And so if you're, oh, thank you, Katie. So if you're interested in diving deeper into communication, feeling supported, yes, Centered Human, you can check it out on my website, guided-voice.com. And then lastly, we have Elevate, which is our sort of like our little VIP program that we're doing this year. VIP because we're only going to allow 6 participants in. We're going to be doing it in March, right?
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure March. And it's gonna be like a little intensive. There's gonna be like a 2 hour session, 2 hour tandem session with Amber and I. There's gonna be um a few things in there. It's still kind of in the works, so we'll probably tell you a little bit more in our next podcast, but keep your eyes peeled for something like that. We do offer that first to the Tea House members. So as we start kind of rolling it out there, if you're like, oh my gosh, I can't miss this, just know that we put it in the tea house first and it usually fills up.
We put everything in the tea house first.
Yeah, we do. So
All
thank
right.
you for listening.
All right. You guys, if anything resonated in this pod, go ahead and share it. Follow us on whatever platform you're watching it on and give us some ratings. We don't ever ask for that stuff, and apparently we're supposed to be. So give us your stars, give us your reviews so that we can pump this baby up because we're back in 2026. So all the effort ain't going there. All
Yeah.
right.
All right. See you guys later. Thank you.
Bye.